Welcome back. You're watching The Money Show. Now, starting the 1st of January 2022, the way that you transact could very well change. There are big changes afoot on the regulatory front. Now, you probably have saved multiple cards over the course of the last several years on these websites where you make purchases, whether it's Amazon or Flipkart or even the food delivery platforms. And then when you need to make a transaction, you put in your CVV, you get an OTP, and then the transaction goes through. Well, starting the new year, that could, or rather, that will be stopping. It's going to be replaced with what is called a digital token so that your private information is protected. To talk about what this means and how big a change this is going to be and why it was necessary, let me bring on board Manas Mishra, who is the Chief Product Officer at PayU. Thank you so much, Manas, for taking the time and for helping us explain this to our viewers. First of all, let's talk about the why of it. Why was this needed? Why did the Reserve Bank of India come out and say that you must have what is being called card-on-file tokenization?
Hey, thanks, Alex. Glad to be back. Let's talk about the why first. That is very straightforward. I think one of the things that Reserve Bank of India wants to protect is consumers' data, like your and my card data, which is very sensitive information. As you said rightly, today we store it in multiple places. When you do a transaction, the merchant will be storing the data. Some of the payment aggregator will be storing the data. Although currently we follow all the protocols, right? All the security protocols that are needed to store the data, but there is still a chance that the data might get leaked, right? It has happened in the past. And when that sensitive data gets leaked, it can be misused. So in order to prevent that, RBI has come up with this new regulation which says that merchants cannot store your data anymore in the normal card format. They have to use something which is a token. It's a token basically is an anonymized form of your card data. And once the merchant, you do the transaction as a consumer on the merchant side, they convert it to a token and only they store it at the token at their end. It makes the data very safe and secure, right? So even if the token information gets leaked, there is no chance that it can get misused, right? So that is why RBI has come up with this regulation, which is going to be into the effect on the 1st of January.
Okay, but let's talk about what happens and what does this entail? How does this digital token or tokenization work? Is it a one-time thing?
Yeah, so the way it will work is as a consumer, when you go back on the 1st of January onwards, when you go back to any of your favorite sites to do the transaction, they will ask you for your consent, right? It is very clear right now that it has to be explicit user consent to save the data in any form, right? Right now it's a token form. So you have to give the consent to the merchant. The merchant completes the transaction. As you said, you have to enter your CVV, you have to enter the OTP and do the transaction. And taking your consent, merchant will call somebody who is a token provider, right? And that entity will return a digital token back to the merchant and they will store it at their end. Okay? So for a consumer, imagine it's very simple experience. First time you have to enter all the details, including your 15-digit card number. But next time you come, again you see the same experience that you see currently, that your card is already stored at the merchant end. For you, you do not realize at the back end it could be a digital token. You don't have to realize that. You don't have to understand that. For you, it's the very same experience that you're currently getting. Merchant has called somebody to get the token back and store the token at their end.
Understood. So who issues, and you say these merchants, right? But there's also a token provider. So who creates these tokens? Who issues these tokens? And is there a charge associated with it?
So for the end consumers, there would be no charge. But the who can issue the token is very simple, right? So the person who can issue the token or the entity who can issue the token is the entity that can have access to your plain cards, right? Plain card details. And that entity currently, as allowed by RBI, is only the card networks, that is Visa, MasterCard, RuPay, or your issuing bank, that is HDFC, ICICI, SBI, etc. Right? So only the networks or the banks can be the token issuers. So the merchants have to connect with them either directly, which is a lot of effort on the merchant side, or they have to work with an aggregator like PayU, which provides a solution on behalf of the networks and the issuing banks to the merchants. Right? So merchants just connect to PayU's token hub, and PayU in the backend takes care of all the pipelines with the networks and issuers to make sure the token is flowing back to the merchant side.
Okay. Now, I want to talk about the smaller platforms, right? So while all the bigger ones would presumably have worked this out, and starting the 1st of January, whenever somebody visits a large platform, they will be prompted to do this process and give their consent like you are suggesting. But what if a merchant does not have that in place? What happens in that scenario?
Sure. So, see, there are a lot of moving pieces currently in the system. First of all, individually, a lot of the large players might be ready, but all of them have to be connected for this to work as seamlessly as we just described, right? So that is one piece which we are expecting some disruption to happen 1st January onwards. Smaller players, yes, there is, for everybody, there is a one-time effort to integrate with the token providers. So if a merchant has not integrated, or let's assume that the network that you're using on your card, the scheme that you're using, doesn't provide a solution for tokenization. So for you as a consumer, what it means that you have to enter your card detail every time because your card cannot be saved, right? So that is the worst experience that you will get. Your transaction is not going to get declined, nothing will fail. The worst thing that could happen is, hey, next time you come back for a repeat purchase, you have to enter the detail again, right? So that is where some of the inefficiencies will come in the system. Till everybody is connected, all the flows are working fine.
So, what else in terms of a teething problem do you anticipate? And this, to a certain extent, I'm asking, what issues could an individual face when they start transacting in this somewhat changed world order in the payments landscape?
Sure. So I think, Alex, what all of us are trying to do right now is first take care of the most important part of the transaction, which is you completing the transaction itself using a token, right? So that is something which everybody is working towards, making sure we minimize the disruption come 1st of January. But there are still a lot of other things that depend on the merchant or the payment aggregator having access to the card detail. For example, if I want to refund your money back to you instantly, currently I push it to your card account, right? For that, again, has to change to now work on a tokenized format. Similarly, to apply any offers on you, I need to understand which bank card you are using to know the offer applicability. A lot of those smaller use cases will take some time. Again, as I said, individual players might be ready, but for all of us to be integrated, connected, and test out all these flows is where it's going to take time. And this is where some of the teething issues will come.
So for small value transactions, do you anticipate there could be a further shift? Already you're seeing UPI as a predominant platform for these small ticket transactions. Do you think that will continue to take place, where especially if there are teething issues, or do you think that things will go to normal very, very quickly?
Yeah, so Alex, there are two scenarios let's talk about. Let's talk about slightly in the future when, as I said, it's a steady state, everything is connected, everything is working fine. I think that actually is a much better scenario for a consumer, even compared to today, right? Because your safety and security concerns are taken care of. Even if you go back today to ask the consumers why many of them prefer cash, because there is a concern in your mind saying that is my data actually secure? Now, this particular tokenization takes care of that aspect of the consumer anxiety. So I think in the longer term, when the teething issues are sorted out, this would actually give rise to more adoption of digital instruments, and that is our belief. Second thing that will happen is, I think using the token, you could expect us to come up with a lot of optimized flow, a lot of frictionless flows, right? For example, if today you go and order food from the same food delivery app every day, you're asked OTP every time. But if it's a token and I know that, hey, it can't be compromised, it's the same user, I can build much more frictionless flows for you so that you don't have to actually enter the OTP every time that you go. Right? So that is where I think the industry is going to move towards once the basic teething issues are sorted out. So once that happens, I think this will give rise to more digital adoption, better approval rates, better success rates. Overall, our industry will benefit from that. But till the time, I think these teething issues are there, not everybody is ready or integrated. You're right. We can probably see a shift in behavior of the consumer they can either move to like a instrument like UPI or to cash. So that can happen in the short term till everything is sorted out.
Am I right in assuming or in understanding that a tokenization could do away with the requirement of two-factor authentication? Is that what you're saying?
Technically no, because the two-factor authentication is still required. But what we are allowed to do is if we can do a risk-based authentication. If we can figure out the risk associated with the transaction is low, so we can use a two-factor, but that doesn't have to be a OTP. That can be a silent two-factor. Right? This kind of solutions are already there in the market. So I can use, for example, your phone device identifier as a second-factor authentication. So a lot of these solutions are out there in the market. With tokenization, I think it becomes easier to push those solutions, make them more widespread than what it is today.
Fantastic. Manas, thank you so much for joining in and for putting all of this into perspective. I think a lot of our viewers will be less confused having listened to this conversation.
Thank you, Alex. My pleasure.